Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Lucy, for getting us here. And thank you for this wonderful event. I've never been here before, and there's something really so rich about all these different genres and looking at slings and arrows through all these different genres. So I want to read two poems from the Little House on Stilts Remembers, and two from the Faustwoman poems. And I really liked the theme, and it helped me think about slings and arrows in very different ways. On the way over, Lucy said that she was going to read a poem that actually had an arrow in it, and it occurred to me that the poem I'm going to start with doesn't quite have an arrow, but it has a nasty, long piece of redwood stuck under my skin, which is kind of an arrow. So, The Little House on Stilts Remembers is, in many ways, it's a book about homes that I've loved and lost, or homes in my family that have been loved and lost. And kind of like what we were just hearing about the wine, you know, it's things that you're connected to over time. This particular home that began the book is one that my husband Dan and I lived in for 15 years on a ridge in Orinda in the East Bay. And it was after the kids were mostly grown and we were no longer accepting kids coming back and living with us. We moved to a house where they couldn't do that. And that house was, it really brought me back to who I was as a girl who loved to be in the natural world and needed to be connected to the natural world. And in that house, I reclaimed myself as a poet. So when we had to sell the house, because it was a maintenance nightmare, you don't want to hear the stories, that was part of the Slings. The house took on a voice, and the voice of the house is what began this poem. It's called Lament of the House. Haven't I stroked you with fingers of light? Haven't I gentled your eyes? Haven't I filled you to brimming with the green world? How it goes golden and brown, how it loses its leaves and goes bare? Haven't I shown you the setting sun, streaked purple and orange, while white fog like sea foam flows over the western hills? Haven't you stood on my deck, poured red wine on the earth, said praises? Haven't I held your clay goddesses, your dancing Ganesha, your Zuni frogs? How can you tear me apart, empty me out, get me staged to be God knows whose fantasy house on a ridge? I who've been source of your source, sacred seat, as clouds form, as hawks dive. Haven't you sat on that old yellow chair, visited by poetry? Haven't you stood in me, naked, in the gaze of the great horned one? Will you send your gods into exile in cardboard boxes? Will the soles of your feet be gone from my spiral stairs? Where will your enthusiasms go? Your wrestling angels, your love cries? Nasty, you called me when I thrust that redwood splinter under your nail. How else can I say it? You and I are inside one another. So we moved to Pleasant Hill. Finally found a townhouse in Pleasant Hill, which we really love. But Pleasant Hill was a suburb, and I had to get under the surface of that. So this is called Wild Girl of Pleasant Hill. Once, this was somebody's grandparents' farm. Sweet as Rebecca of Sunnybrook, do you remember how she skipped among meadows with wildflowers till thrown like a sheep to the ground, shorn of her corn, her hay? She's still here, that girl. You'll see her playing in the fountains near Rotten Robbie's Gasoline, or herding her geese by the Chinese all-you-can-eat buffet, while cars zoom past on 680 in sight of the mountain. You'd think she'd be dead by now. After all the concrete poured, that girl is wild as Rima, talks to the willows, to the birches, laughs aloud at the ducks who have commandeered the community swimming pool. Old ecstatic of trees, have you forgotten Green Mansion? That slip of a girl who first lit the green fuse? So I'm here to tell you that despite all the slings and arrows that have happened to poor Pleasant Hill, that girl lives there still. So the Faust Woman poems began with a very powerful dream that I had, in which a woman who was a woman of another time, but also me, went to the church at Chimayo, which many of you, I imagine, have been to. It's a very beautiful, sacred place. And at the church, she walks into the church and she's got a baby in her arms. And as she moves into the church, she's transformed into this woman in a red power suit with pointy heels and a attaché case, and a voice from the altar calls her Faust Woman. And I thought, what in the world is that all about? Well, when that happens to me, I start writing poems. And I want to read the title poem. What emerged as I worked with it was that, well, Lucy and I are of the generation, some of us here, of the generation of women who went through women's liberation and who had the experience of going from a world in which our mothers were very, very dominated by the patriarchal controls and by patriarchs in my family's. My father was a patriarch. And suddenly, you know, in my 20s and 30s, this revolution happened, and all these things opened up, and all these possibilities in terms of work, in terms of sexuality, in terms of creativity, in terms of identity, and in terms of causing a lot of damage, causing suffering myself, as we did, you know, we flung ourselves out of marriages and did all kinds of crazy stuff. People got hurt. So Goethe's Faust is a major influence in my work, and it came to me that Faust wasn't just male, there was a female version, and I had experienced some of that. That was part of my shadow that I had to work with. And it was also part of what liberated me and what gave me the ability to become who I was. So Faust Woman is a kind of a devil. Faust Woman. You didn't know the taste of your own honey. Didn't know Willow Thighs, Delta Song, until that cast-out she materialized in your kitchen, a dazzle of dust-ridden light, a voice, a hand, offering you the world. Do you want power among city towers, purses of gold, flashy transport? Would you prefer a country lane, green glow of vineyards, summer breasts? What about lovers? A stormy character playing the flute? A silent guy with dreads? Maybe a talkative lover who'll promise to publish you if only you'll break out of your kitchen cage, take a hammer to the dishes, an axe to the door. This is not your elegant traveling scholar, Grandfather Goethe, but she's from your own realm. You've handed her down to us. This home wrecker, this bearer of light, daughter of mothers who've been treading the untrod, untreadable, empty of voice, empty of prayer, since Troy fell. Okay, so it's a few generations later, and where are we now with all of that? That's the slings and arrows of mortality and getting older and the changes in the culture. So this is the poem that I'm going to end with. Is about that. It's called Sisters of My Time. What became of our fierce flowering? Don't you remember how that old black magic revealed herself to us, gave us the fever the crazy nerve to burn bras, leave husbands, grow animal hair. We knew her belly laugh, her circle dance, her multiple orgasms. It was our period. What became of us? Our period long gone, stuck in traffic jams, eaten by Facebook, gone stale amidst the unwept, unsayable. Some of us burst our vessels. Some of us descended into root cellars, ghosts among the apricot preserves. Meanwhile, our bones thin, our skin loosens, our hands can't handle a mason jar. And our red queen, what of her? Her rainforests bleed out, her corn won't tassel, her cattle are dying of thirst, her ivory-billed woodpecker, that God Almighty bird, has not been heard for a generation. Our Lady of Ripening's gone on a rampage, hot flashes in the heartland, fire in the forest, flood in the bayou, weeping ice caps. Our grandchildren starve for her belly laugh, her circle dance. Now is the time, sisters, to gather what spells we know, what seeds we've cultivated, what oracle speaks in our dreams, for the root cellars of memory, the mason jars of prayer, emergency rations for the daughters of our daughters, long after that old black magic has spirited us away. Thank you.